We're about ready. Maybe, maybe not. Are we about ready? Okay. We'll begin in a minute. I have 12:59 according to my Apple Watch. Anybody stay up late and watch a game? It wasn't. Yeah, my wife, she goes to bed at 9. Yeah, there was that. We'll begin the Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council. At this point, I'd like to request that we roll call, please.
Fusco.
Aye.
Kamer.
Aye.
Connor. Aye. Boys.
Aye.
Hannah.
Aye.
All committee members are present.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion. We accept the minutes of the last meeting. There's
Second.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay. Very good. That carries. We have 3 items, I believe, that's up for public hearing today. The procedures are that we will get a report from our planning department. Afterwards, what we'll then do is swear in any individuals that wish to testify before the committee. Then we'll open up the public hearing portion, ask for comments, either in favor or against, or just general questions. After that, we'll close the committee meeting, open it up to the committee for questions or comments. After that, we'll then open up to all of council. We'll repeat that procedure this evening at 5 o'clock. However, the only difference between then and now is that the committee is going to make a recommendation to all of council, either in favor, against, or to table an item, take time, is what we call that, to study further, whatever that may be. So with that, I would like to request that Sarah Biviano, our clerk, please read in the first item that's up for public hearing. Thank you.
The first item up for public hearing today is an ordinance authorizing a conditional use to create additional parking at 1990 Parkgate Avenue and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Antonucci.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. DRK Partners LLC is seeking approval to extend the parking lot of its existing office building at White Pond Drive onto 2 lots in the residential district that have frontage along Parkgate Avenue. The lots were not part of the original 2018 conditional use, which approved the medical office use along White Pond Drive. The submitted site plans indicate that the dwelling would be raised while the detached garage will remain. An asphalt driveway and parking area for 17 vehicles would extend onto the two parcels from the existing parking lot to the south and connect with the garage. There would be no access from Parkgate Avenue. The paved surface will be nearly 25 feet from Parkgate Avenue, with a planted row of burning bushes along the north and a fence along the eastern side to provide screening, limiting visibility from adjacent residential uses. Petitioner states that a portion of the office building at 539 White Pond Drive remains vacant due to the limited amount of parking, and the expansion of the parking lot would be utilized for staff within the offices along White Pond. The goal of the Land Use and Development Guide Plan is to protect and preserve residential neighborhoods. The existing brick single-family dwelling appears to be in good condition and contributes to the overall viability of the residential neighborhood. The demolition of a home in this desirable neighborhood for the expansion of an asphalt parking lot is contrary to sound planning principles. Raising the home would not only reduce the taxable value of the land, but would be disruptive to and not harmonious with the abutting residential uses to the east and north. Furthermore, the office property appears to have enough area east of its existing parking for an expansion. A viable alternative would be to expand the parking lot onto the area that is now set aside for water detention, with the installation of underground water detention storage tanks that are able to control stormwater runoff. The planning staff recommends disapproval, while the Planning Commission recommends approval. Thank you.
Mr. Antonucci, at this time, I'd like to respectfully request that Sarah Biviano, our clerk, please swear in any individuals that wish to testify before the committee, including those that may be online.
If you'd like to provide testimony for this public hearing, could you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth? If so, please say, "I do."
I do.
Thank you.
Very good. At this point, we'll begin the public hearing and ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request on Parkgate, 1990 Parkgate. If you could please provide for us your name and address, and please welcome and step up to the microphone, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fusco. I'm Bob Constant. I'm the attorney for the applicant, DRK Partners, who owns the real estate. DRK is the real estate end of Akron Oral Surgeons. They built a building in 2019 for their new facility. Unfortunately, they have about 3,000 square feet vacant because they have insufficient parking at this time. They haven't even been able to get a regular tenant because they just don't have the parking. Each surgeon sees between 20 and 30 patients a day, plus they have quite a large staff to do the oral surgery. So Dr. Kimberly asked me to pursue an option to purchase the property at 1990 Parkgate. It is 2 lots. It's more like a lot and a half. They're not 2 full-size building lots. One lot is where the house is. The house is currently vacant. It's not in the best of shape. It could be restored, but as I said, the house is vacant. The garage is a 2-car garage that is detached from the house, and we plan to retain that. That's in much better shape than the house is, and we thought that would be a good buffer to the neighbors to the east. I think, do you have before you the site plan that we proposed with our application? Okay, so you can see the landscape plan. Mr. Antonucci stated that there would be no access from Parkgate into this parking lot, and the parking lot would just be for employees. There wouldn't be in and out of patients or anything else. The patients will park in the main parking lot. In fact, Dr. Kimberly will use the garage so that he can park his car. Unfortunately, to get the number of parking spaces that we need, we have to demo the house. We did look, and Mr. Antonucci did suggest looking at the detention area that's already on the property. We had that measured off, and unfortunately, we can't get 2 rows of parking. We could only get 1 row of parking, which would be about 9 additional spaces. And that's insufficient for the purposes we need. What Akron Oral Surgery would like to do is bring on a 3rd surgeon with a complement of about 7 or 8 surgical employees on a full-time basis to utilize the space that they're not utilizing now. We think that with the improvements they're going to be doing on Parkgate, even if the house is ultimately demoed, that the value to the city of the additional patients, the additional water and sewer consumption by his office, and the value of his property increasing would offset any losses to the city of Akron. As the house sits now, it's vacant. The water and sewer is minimal, and we're concerned about keeping the house vacant. It'll just deteriorate. I would like to state, though, the property to the north, immediately to the north, is already parking. It is a senior center apartment. There is no residential to the north. The only residential would be to the east, and we've really tried to buffer that, and we're willing to add additional buffering if that would work for that person. They already have Dr. Kimberly farther to the south, so they're aware of the operation. Lastly, and in conclusion, I just want to state that this parking, as I said, will be employees only. There'll be no one there on weekends. There'll be no one there in the evenings, and there'll be no in and out. It won't be a busy parking because it'll just be for employees. It'll be a very unobtrusive, no curb cut. I do have some pictures, if I may share with you, of what Dr. Kimberly has done with another lot off of Revere Road that he purchased and the way he landscaped it. He wants to make this a park-like campus setting for his employees, and he is concerned about the neighbors. And he instructed me to work with the neighbors any way I can to try to appease the neighbors and make sure that they don't feel like they're being taken advantage of by this.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Oh, okay, thanks. Thank you so much. Pardon?
I think I made 10 copies, so that
Oh,
I
okay,
might-
good. Yeah.
I may use them for city council later.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use? Excuse me. Anyone else? Anyone wishing to speak against the conditional use? If you could please provide for us your name and address. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for giving me a chance to speak. My name's Mary King, and I live at 1940 Park Gate, which is a little bit farther down the street. Park Gate, you should know, is not a through street. It goes in one direction, and then there's a little cul-de-sac, and then it goes back out. So it's a very quiet, very private kind of street. My objection to this parking lot is really what Mr. Antonucci said. It destroys the character of the neighborhood. And I brought some pictures, and I think maybe you have these, of this house. I mean, it is a vacant house. It's been vacant since December because the people who lived there had to leave. The man's father entered dementia and had to have care. So he and his wife moved to care for this aged parent. They didn't leave because the house wasn't in good shape, and I think these pictures show what a charming and beautiful house it is, with several large, fine trees on the lot as well. Bringing in a parking lot increases the commercial creep around our neighborhood. White Pond Drive has lots of buildings with parking lots, very overbuilt. Those buildings, many of them are vacant. It's not because there's not enough parking. It's because nobody wants those buildings. Nobody uses those parking lots. I don't see why the city would tear down a beautiful house and find big trees when the city is trying to add trees and add housing in order to create more parking that isn't needed. Lots of people walk on our street just to walk. People from Ohio Edison, people from Dagnesi's maybe, people from across the street. It gives us some cohesion. It would remove that cohesion to have a parking lot there instead. And that's part of my objection. We don't know our neighbors very well. People have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in those houses to live there. In most households, both of the adults and the grown children are working, so they can afford to live there. We don't want to see that destroyed. That's why we came there, because it was beautiful. Our house is one of 5 individually built houses. All the other houses are Ryan homes, which is fine, but they don't have fine big trees. They don't have that individual look that our houses have. Tearing down that house would be a mistake, I think. Did you want to speak to? This is my husband, Dick. He lives in the same house I do.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down today. Thank you.
Fortunately, I do. I'm Richard King, and I would just want to add to what Mary said by pointing out, I think we're all familiar with the White Pond development, which has been very controversial, of course. But what's happened there, what is going to happen more, right now, Mall Avenue and White Pond Avenue are access points to and from I-77. So the traffic is fairly heavy. Getting out of our street, Park Gate, is a challenge sometimes. With the 220 units being built on White Pond, the whole neighborhood, Park Gate, Lawton, Scudder, we all have a huge concern about the traffic that's going to occur. I guess what's so concerning about this parking lot coming onto our street is we have a very nice street. Everybody on that street takes great pride in their homes, and it's a fine neighborhood. Adding a parking lot onto Parkgate really starts to destroy that nature. It's already being destroyed somewhat with the addition of these new homes on the 220 homes, plus the Simon Perkins area homes. So I guess if we add that parking lot to our neighborhood, it destroys the flavor of it. We moved in 7 years ago, and one of the reasons that we did move in there was because the neighborhood was so well preserved. And we love the house, of course, that we're in. So we would rather see, and we know through looking at that area, the parking area behind the house that's supposed to be demolished, there is a lot of parking over there which is not being used. Could be accessed from that lot, from that house. There is, from the business, excuse me, that could access to those parking spaces. And it would not mean that much of an additional walk for people using the doctor's offices. So I think that needs to be explored more rather than demolishing this home. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you both for coming down today. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else here with any comments referencing the conditional use request for 1990 Parkgate? Anyone else? Anyone? Very good. Not hearing anyone, we'll close the public hearing portion and open up to any questions that may come from any of the committee members. Any questions from committee? Yes, Tina Boyce.
Thank you. I was curious, planning staff or otherwise, has there been any kind of connection to the parking lot adjacent? Well, I guess that'd be just to the west, accessibility back and forth. I noticed there's a partition there where child time is. Is there any way for pedestrian access from that, what seems to be underutilized parking lot, to this building?
Well, there is sidewalk. They would be able to, go out and use that to access that parking from there. So it'd be a little bit of a walk. But yeah, there's a couple other parking lots around there that could potentially be utilized as well.
May I respond?
Sure.
I did investigate the parking. It's not to the west. The west would be across on the other side of White Pond. It would be to the south. There's childcare, and then there's a little office complex with 2 other buildings. And I did inquire if they would be interested in any type of long-term lease for permanent parking for us. And they said no, they would not, because the 2 offices that are, to the east of the childcare utilize all the spaces. So they said they really wouldn't have any interest in that. I don't think it would be a good planning procedure to have to cross White Pond, and I don't think there's parking there anyway. With regard to the comment from the neighbors, and we appreciate what they've said, I did investigate the parking area off. It would be to the west of the property we're trying to get the conditional use for. In fact, we tried to buy it. It was listed for sale with the house in the front. And when I called and I was authorized to make a full price offer on it, it was sold. So I subsequently contacted the new buyer to see if they would have any interest in selling us or leasing us some of that ground for parking directly behind the house, which would be to the west of 1990. And he said no, that he's going to utilize that for parking for his use. I guess it's going to become an accounting office. So we really have tried to find other alternatives. In terms of the trees, You'll note on the site plan that we're preserving all of the large trees. That was one of the things the city was concerned about, and we did 4 versions of the site plan, and the last version that we submitted protected the large trees. And you can see the way the landscaping is going to be. There's a full landscaping plan. And lastly, there will be no traffic. The Kings mentioned that there's traffic on Parkgate. This will not generate any traffic at all on Parkgate. Everything will go through the existing parking lot directly onto White Pond. The larger issue for you to consider, I know this is the Planning and Zoning Committee, but you've got to balance planning and zoning, what the neighbors feel like with what's best for the city of Akron. And I commend the city for what they've done in White Pond. I think they've done it well. It's been well planned. I commend the planning department on how they've been able to use the properties. And unfortunately, this is a natural extension of what's going on there. And I would ask for a favorable recommendation from you.
Thank you, thank you. Are you okay? Any other questions from any committee members? Not seeing or hearing any. Jan Davis, the ward council person, has a comment, question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the opportunity to meet with Mr. and Mrs. King and the architect and also Jeff on yesterday at the site. And I would respectfully ask if your committee could call for time on this so we can have more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, thank you. Any other comments or questions from anyone? Very good. If you'd like to stick around, you can afterwards. We can maybe have a little chat. At this point, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you all for coming down today. We certainly appreciate it. At 5 o'clock, we will have an additional public hearing. Procedures will, in essence, be the same. However, the committee will make a recommendation to all of council. That's the only difference. So thank you very much for coming down. With that, the second item, Ms. Biviano, could you please read that in? Thank you.
The second item up for public hearing today is an ordinance authorizing a conditional use to construct a 2-family dwelling at 161 Hillbush Avenue and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Antonucci?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Qutaiba Abdel Jawad is requesting permission to construct a 2-family dwelling at this location. Submitted plans show the dwelling to be set back 25 feet from the front property line to match the neighboring homes. The units will be 2-story and set side by side, each with 3 bedrooms. The driveway would be located north of the building to enable parking behind the building line setback. The bungalow-style duplex will have a centered front porch over both entrances and extend 8 feet out from the facade. The stick-built home will have vinyl siding and trim, a composite shingle roof, and fiberglass windows. The petitioner states that the original home on the property had burned down. The goal of the Land Use and Development Guide Plan is to promote a variety of new housing types to meet the requirements and desires of the city's population. The proposed design and siting of the home is compatible with other dwellings in the surrounding neighborhood, while the size of the lot is larger than most in the neighborhood, affording adequate open space and parking for the 2-family dwelling. The planning staff and planning commission recommend approval, subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone here wishing to testify before the committee. If you could please be sworn in from our clerk, Sarah Biviano.
Could you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth? If so, please say, "I do."
I do.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Gross. I'm the architect representing the Abdel Jawad brothers. And this lot is right next to their father's home, and they would like to be able to support his garden and his parents. And so the 2 brothers have this oversized lot that could accommodate comfortably a 2-family home. We intend to have the home look just like the houses, in character with the other homes in the neighborhood. And they keep their existing property very nice. There's a lovely garden there that they want to be able to tend with their parents. So on their behalf, I just want to speak for this project.
Thank you. Thank you very much. What's your address, sir? Address?
24600 Hazelmere, Beechwood, Ohio.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right.
For the record. Attorneys, they always ask us to get that. Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor and or against the proposal for a two-family at 161 Hillbush. Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor or against? Okay, not hearing or seeing anyone. We'll open it up to questions from any committee members and/or council members. Mr. McKittrick? Okay, we're good. With that, we'll close the public hearing, and we'll move on to the next item that's up for a public hearing. Ms. Viviano?
The final item up for public hearing today is an ordinance authorizing a conditional use to establish a dual-use cannabis dispensary at 926 East Waterloo Road and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Antonucci?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Pharmaceutical RX LLC is seeking permission to establish a dual-use cannabis dispensary at this location. Any medical, dual-use, or adult-use marijuana cultivation, processing, dispensing, or testing facility in the city needs conditional use approval. This location must also be reviewed and approved by Coventry Township and the State of Ohio Division of Cannabis Control. Petitioner intends to remodel the currently vacant retail building on the site to be utilized as a dual-use dispensary. The structure would receive a modest addition at the rear of the structure, which is in Coventry Township. A new aluminum and glass storefront system would be installed, and fresh paint would be applied to the masonry exterior. Parking for 30 vehicles is available to the front of the building in Akron, and a dozen additional spaces are available to the rear of the structure in Coventry. The 2,751 square foot building would require no more than 14 parking spaces. A drive-through lane would encircle the building, allowing products to be picked up through a window on the east side of the facility. Deliveries would occur within a secure fenced area at the rear of the building. No objections to the proposed use have been received from any city department. Lighting and video surveillance, in addition to other requirements for packaging and prohibited activities on the property, should mitigate any negative effects on the surrounding neighborhood. The proposed use is in a heavily traveled retail district with highway access and is more than a mile from any other cannabis facility. One goal of the Land Use and Development Guide Plan is to guide the location of new retail development so that it will be convenient to residents served and will have minimal impact on adjacent properties. The proposed dual-use dispensary would reactivate a vacant retail structure and is adjacent to compatible uses. And the planning staff and planning commission recommend approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you for your report, Mr. Antonucci. Could you please swear in any individuals that wish to testify before the committee, Ms. Viviano?
Sure, we do have some individuals that signed up online as well, so if you're here online with us, I can swear you in at the same time. Could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth? If so, please say, I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Very good. At this point, we'll open up the public hearing process, and we'll ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use process. If you could please come before the committee, and welcome to Akron City Council. If you can please provide for us your address and name.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for allowing us here today. So my name is Greg Gorosby, 667 Park Edge Drive, Gahanna, Ohio. With me here today remotely are Mike Eisengay and Jake Weiskirk. They are the real estate consultants for the applicant. So we accept the statement of the application that was read in by Mr. Antonucci. We note that, at the beginning there was some question about whether this kind of approval would be necessary, but on the advice of Mr. Antonucci and legal counsel for the city, we agreed to go through this process and are happy to do so. As noted, the building does not lie on the Akron side of the property line. It actually is on the other side of the property line and therefore has to go through separate proceedings with Coventry Township, which are ongoing right now. Similar to all of the other dispensaries that you've seen come before this group, we are planning to have state required security, which goes to both the 360-degree cameras, both inside and out, as well as secure deliveries, no open containers or opening of product on the premises, either inside the building or in the parking lot, no loitering policy, again, inside the building or outside in the parking lot, and security staff that are there during all operating hours, as well as 24-hour monitoring by camera when there's no one on the premises, or actually, even if there are people on the premises. This point, we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Continue the public hearing. I'd like to ask if there's anyone else here wishing to testify in favor of the conditional use request, including those online. If there's anyone else with any questions or comments in favor of the proposal? Anyone else? Okay, not hearing anyone. Anyone opposed to the conditional use request on Waterloo Road, East Waterloo?
I do.
Yes, sir. If you could please provide for us your name and address. Thank you.
Yes. My name is Walid Niemer. I am an internal medicine physician. We've been in practice for 38 years. We were on Brown Street, whereby the practice had been there for 56 years before I came in 1986. So just to simplify things, this practice has been going on for 91 years, and we do have articles from the newspaper, etc., about this practice that we could submit at any time is needed. So we moved from Brown Street because the area was getting to be pretty rough. We had problems hiring staffing. Patients were having difficulty making later appointments, et cetera, et cetera. So we invested in this land here a few years ago, and it was over $1 million. But that's not only the most important is serving the community for all these many years. And like I said, for 91 years. There was Dr. Katurji right below us down the street from us on Waterloo Road, and he had retired and left. And there was a couple other doctors too there by that pharmacy, and then also they left. So we were the only practice left in this area. So now we're in the process of bringing in younger physicians. We had been doing this for the last year and a half, and we do have plans to have these physicians come in a very short period of time coming on. So at this point, this is very discouraging to us that we have a dispensary here, despite of what my friends have been saying on how safe it is and how secure it is. If you look at the history of these dispensaries, it will be self-explanatory. When you have a dispensary next to a medical facility, it's an issue, and there's increased foot traffic. There is a security issue. You could put in, all the security men around or the policemen. It's like you're bringing in let's say, low crime jail into this area. And you could put all the security in, but there's still going to be issues with these people that are 90 years old and 80 years old, and the staff coming out at night. Whether we like it or not, it's that's an issue. So if this comes on, then I can tell you our plans would be discontinued, or actually we can abort our plans and thinking that we have to go somewhere else. But I am almost 70 years old, and I'm not planning on, I'll let the hospital or somebody else do that, because I'm the president of the medical society in the area in Summit County, and I wanted to continue on serving if I could help it. So, by all means, this is my opinion, and we'll see. Now, just a footnote, we do have Dr. Rashid Niemer, who is on, I don't remember that, 577 Grant Street, which is not too far from here. He is he is a younger physician that was because of well, he wanted to bring in the practice into this building as well, and we do have over a little 6,000 square feet here, and we have quite a bit of land in the back that this is one of the plans we had as well. So what I'm trying to say is on the footnote that building is it's fairly new, and it's on 577 Grant Street, and there would be no objection to bring in a dispensary into that. Of course, it needs to go through the zoning and all that, but as far as we're concerned, we welcome this. And we're physicians, and we believe in these dispensaries that they are necessary, and there are patients that require that treatment. But there are also quite a few patients that do violate the regulations and abuse this. So we could welcome the other location, but we will try to fight this on this location as far as we can go. That's it for me.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else here wishing to make any comments in favor or against? Seeing that, we'll close the public hearing portion, open up to any committee members that may have any questions. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this the old Archer Treachers building on Waterloo Road? It used to be the old Archer Treachers, is that correct? And it was going to be
It was the Arthur
Yes.
Treachers, is that correct? Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I was up on this one, too. Any further questions or comments at this time? I see Linda Mobian's hand up. Yes, Linda? I think you're on mute. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Good. My question is, how long has this dispensary been there? And do we have any information about their track record in terms of being a nuisance or having any problems with the community or anything?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Antonucci, would you like to answer that?
Well, yeah, this would be a brand new location for a dispensary. So it's a vacant Arthur Treacher's restaurant now, essentially, former restaurant. So as far as track record, I would imagine the petitioner would have some comments on that.
Okay.
Certainly. Mr. Isengay, do you want to speak a little bit about the history of pharmaceutical RX and the lack of issues that they have had during their existence operating dispensaries?
Yeah, we have two dispensaries right now. One is in East Liverpool, one is in Cuyahoga Falls, and then we have a level 1 cultivation in East Liverpool as well. So we're fully vertically integrated in the state of Ohio, have been operating for several years now, and have an experienced retail team in particular, that runs these dispensaries very well. And we pay close attention to not only the state regulations, but from a safety and security standpoint, that's one of the things that we emphasize in the operations of all our facilities, including the dispensaries and cultivation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that answer. Is that okay, Mrs. Mobian? Are you okay?
Yes. Now that I know it's a brand new one to Akron. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions or comments from anyone? And of course, again, we'd like to invite you back at 5 o'clock this evening, in which the committee will make a recommendation to all of council, either in favor, against, or to table an item.
Sure.
Take time.
I actually
Thank you for coming
one
down.
further comment.
Well, sure.
So the only, with respect to the safety issue, our firm has done a research of not just favorable articles, but essentially every article that's peer-reviewed, published, scholarly articles that have been written since the late 90s when medical marijuana was first allowed in California through today. And overwhelmingly, all of these articles, which I can make available to the city council,
Thank you.
all of these articles say that presence of a dispensary either there's no effect on crime, or it actually lessens the amount of crime in the area due to the amount of monitoring that's involved with the cameras and the security presence and so forth. There are a few articles, maybe 10% of the articles that do say there's a slight increase in maybe car break-ins or something like that, but those are generally in states like Colorado, California that do not have the level of regulation that Ohio has.
Very good.
And so I'd be happy to make that available to you if you'd like.
I think we're okay because we're focused primarily on the land use issue itself, not necessarily about that piece of it. But thank you very much for stating that. Mr. Antonucci, I do have a question for you. Reference the regulation around the public safety side. During the hours of operation, do they have to have a security, or do they have to have a police officer, or do they have to have somebody on site during the hours of operation? Are you familiar?
Yeah, the state rules that have been handed down from the commission that handles marijuana are very particular on this, and yes, they have to.
They during the hours of operation?
Not only during hours of operation, but they have to be very careful, in terms of how deliveries are made, how trash is handled. Also,
Gotcha.
They're very particular. The rules are and detailed.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Again, invite you back this evening. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Silly me. We'll now move into the list of regular legislation. The fourth item, I believe, is we have a substitute, I think. Am I right?
We do have two substitutes on regular agenda items. The first one is item number 5.
Yes.
You will see the substitute offered as an amendment as item number 4 in the new legislation list. And that is a resolution adopting the 2025 Capital Investment and Community Development Program, legally referred to as the Capital Investment Budget, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you for reading that in. Is there any questions or comments from anyone whatsoever referencing this? I think it's a second substitute, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Questions or comments from anyone? I believe we're okay on it. So with that, I'd like to entertain a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Against, thank you. Was there an against? I don't think so. You want a roll call just in case?
Sure. Fusco?
Aye.
Kamer?
Aye.
Connor? Aye. Boyce?
Aye.
Hannah?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Why, thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to the balance of the agenda. We're going to take time on, what is that, 6? I'm sorry, 5, 6. Through and including, you'd mentioned another
Yes, I have.
substitute as for number 9, correct?
Yes, we have another substitute offered as an amendment. This is for item number 9 on the regular agenda. You will see the substitute offered as an amendment as listed as number 5 in the new legislation list, and that is an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into an agreement or agreements with the Development Finance Authority of Summit County or its designee to modify the terms of the existing ground lease related to 1 Cascade Plaza and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Volleman?
Yes, this was a piece that originally came in September. We are looking to do a presentation on it on the 24th, and would like to move forward.
So the request is to refer this item?
Yep. Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a recommendation to refer this item? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Okey-doke. Thank you on that. We'll take time on the balance of the agenda. I do believe we have a couple other items that are not necessarily substitutes. I would call your attention to item number 6, I believe, correct?
That is correct. Item number 6 is an ordinance authorizing the vacation for a right-of-way that was temporarily needed for redevelopment of the residences of Good Park for a portion of Kildare Road and West Sunset View Drive and declaring an emergency.
Yes, sir. Welcome, Mr. Messner.
Well, thank you very much, sir. So basically, this piece of legislation just clears up a old utility right-of-way that's over at the residences of Good Park. It's no longer needed. We just needed to retain it through construction as Kildare Avenue was relocated. So we'd just like to free it up so the property owners don't have that on their property.
Okay. Very good. So we're keeping this utility easement, you say?
We're getting rid of the old utility easement underneath where Kildare Avenue used to go, since
Yeah.
they've relocated it.
Oh, okay, relocation of it. Okay, that's cool. And this is for what utilities in particular?
We typically retain it for water and sewer, but it's any public utilities.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Is consent agenda okay?
That'd be perfectly fine.
Good. Any further questions or comments? Is there a recommendation for consent? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay, thanks. Ms. Viviano, item number 7, please.
Item number 7 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into an agreement or agreements with Deshaun Johnson, DBA Experience Barber and Beauty Shop for the lease of retail space in the city-owned Broadway parking deck and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Villeman?
Yes, hi, thank you. Deshaun Johnson has been operating the Experience Barber and Beauty Shop out of the Broadway deck. We have the little retail spots throughout. For whatever reason, when it was originally set up, it was a lease to Alan Ederer, who subleased it to Mr. Johnson. Mr. Ederer had passed away, and as part of cleaning up their estate, they did not want to stay in that role as the middleman. So we are proposing to do a direct lease with Mr. Johnson through the end of next year.
Very good, thank you. Any questions or comments from anyone? Is consent agenda okay?
That would be great.
Thank you, sir. Is there a recommendation for consent agenda?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? The ayes have it. Very good. Thank you all. And with that, the planning committee is adjourned. Thank you. Ms. Viviano.
Our next committee today will be the Public Service Committee, and it will begin at 2 o'clock. Those committee members are Kamer, McKittrick, DeShazier, Bolden, and Lombardo. Again, that's the Public Service Committee, and it will begin at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Okay, it's 2 o'clock, and our next committee of the day is the Public Service Committee. Those committee members are Kamer, McKittrick, DeShazier, Bolden, and Lombardo. We do have all committee members present whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I'd like to move forward and call the public service meeting to order, please. All members are present, and we do need to approve our minutes from last week.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, well, thank you. We do have numerous pieces in front of us today. I'm going to ask Sarah if she can start us off with number 8.
Sure. Number 8 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for the construction and replacement of various sections of sidewalk throughout the city and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Sarah. And I do see we have our Service Director, Chris Luttle, with us. Chris, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. This is our annual sidewalk replacement program. I want to thank Council. Last year we bumped this up, and also we made this a priority in the mayor's office. So this is another $1 million of funding to replace sidewalks throughout the city. As you know, the sidewalk replacement program is a petition process. Our residents request that. A lot of that comes from ward meetings where you as council people explain to them how they can get on the list, I should say. So they put the petition in, we go out and meet with them, we look at the defective sidewalk. If the sidewalk was damaged due to a street tree, we do allow for 3 slabs, up to 3 slabs of replacement. After that, it would be an assessed portion that is not covered by that, or if there is no tree and they want their sidewalk replaced. So these funds that are allotted cover the majority of that cost, and then the homeowners are assessed $25.25 for each linear foot. So general rule of thumb, each sidewalk slab's about 5 feet. So if you have 2 defective pieces of sidewalk, it's gonna, we will come out, contractor will remove them, and if you're assessed, it's roughly about $250. Some in this legislation will cover some ADA handicap ramps around our parks and crosswalks. Part of this legislation will also include if the homeowner puts a petition process for a brand new driveway aprons on our typical residential homes are about 150 square feet. Our assessment rate is $3 for each square foot. So roughly, if you had that, it would cost you a little under $500 for a brand new drive apron. This legislation will help us do some retaining walls, need be. We were always behind before this increase in legislation 3 or 4 years. With this particular funding, this will take care of all petitions that were put in 2023 or previously. It will take care of all petitions that were put in 2024 up to about July of last year. So we're less than a year behind with this process. And there again, I will obviously take any questions. It's advertised currently, so bids will be back soon. Then we'll have to work through the contract. So consent would be fine on this legislation, sir.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. I'm a huge advocate for this program, and I thank the city for continuing with it every year. Committee members, are there any questions or comments for Mr. Luttle?
Mr. Chair, Councilman Lombardo has his hand raised.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So you start off by, you wanted to thank council. We want to thank you for this program. Because I am, like Councilman Kamer, a big advocate. So you slid some numbers in on me real quick. So I'll just review. If the 3 sidewalks per tree, they need another sidewalk. You mentioned $250 for 2. So is that right? $125 each?
Well, a typical slab's about 5 foot, sir. So if you take, you know, if you take the $25.25, it's a linear foot, not a square foot. So when I say we allow up to 3, we do send someone out to every property to make that assessment. Don't assume that, oh, I have a tree and it's pushed up a sidewalk and I'm going to get 3 slabs replaced at no cost. If it's only one, then it's only one. And if they're cracked on either side that wasn't caused by the tree, then that'll be a discussion that, you know, we'll have to have. But
okay, but if it's 4, then it's
if
up to
it's
120.
4, yes, exactly.
Okay, got that. And then I looked down, I'm sorry, you said you're up to July of 24?
Yes. So really, that's less than a year.
Right, because in previous years.
We were 2 or 3 years sometimes, going back probably 4 or 5 years ago.
I know. And then if we have somebody, because I'm sure we all get these calls, I made this request, you know, where am I? So if I have that type of person or business, contact who?
Tish Jurgensen in engineering. She's our
Tish
Jurgensen. Yes, she's our person that handles this program. I think some people maybe just because they call 311, they think they're automatically on the list. They are sent an application. They must fill out the application. We must go out and visit them and then work the whole process, okay? So if they call 311 and they never receive the application, they need to call back, right?
Right.
I mean, it's going to take a week to get it there, but once they send it back in, they could always message us and say, where am I on the list, you know?
Okay, good. Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilman. Committee members, any other questions or comments for Mr. Luddle? Councilman?
I just have one comment. There's some people who still feel like that their sidewalks are misfits with the trees that they have. Who should they contact? Is that also Tish?
Yes.
Whether it is or not, I'm not sure, but, you know, somebody else has to make that decision.
Yeah,
So.
and we have looked at some of these cases. We all love our trees, or a large majority of our residents love our trees. If we could go in and it's not lifted 2 inches, you know, that's kind of rule of thumb because it's a 4-inch slab. So if it's not lifted 2 inches and only lifted 1 inch, we go in and we can horizontal cut that with our contractor. We have a contractor that will take that edge off, save the tree, and there'll be no cost to the resident. It's called horizontal cutting, and we have this in this also. But if it's more than 2 inches out, then that's more than half the thickness of the slab. We can't saw cut that because then it's going to crack. It's, you know, you're not going to be able to save it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Omobian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Luddle, thank you for this, for the children who walk to school as well, because I think this provides some safety. My question has to do with individuals who didn't call in, and if they call in now, about how much time does it take to get on the list?
Well, I mean, if we're less than a year behind, it would be, you know, conceivably, unless we would get a lot of requests in the next 2 months, it would be done in the 26 program, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Appreciate it. Chris mentioned consent agenda. I'll make that motion.
Oh, yeah, I'll make the motion for consent. I didn't know that was a question, but motion for consent.
Second?
All in favor for consent agenda?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. Moving on to the next piece, Sarah.
Item number 9 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for the emergency demolition of 76 condemned residential structures located throughout the city and declaring an emergency.
Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. Yes, this is a grant we received from the Ohio Department of Development. I got to give planning staff credit for putting this application together. So this legislation will be covered 75% by the grant, 25% by the city, which we do have in the capital budget. This will take care of 76 properties that have been ordered to be demolished. We recently bid this project, so we'd like to award this project to 3 contractors. They're all local. One, we will keep these contractors in certain areas, so to reduce their mobilization, but also we need to get these, to meet the grant deadline, we need to get all these structures down by the end of April. So authorizing this legislation will allow us to get going right away, and getting 76 of these blighted homes, I think, is all gonna, it's gonna help all of our neighbors. Some of them have been waiting a year, 2, 3, sometimes 4 years, depending if it was an insurance claim or firm to sign a waiver for these homes. So with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Hey, Chris, is there a list of all these?
Yes, we'll send it over to Sarah this afternoon so she can get it to all of you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Committee members, any questions or comments for Mr. Luddle? I still have Mr. Luddle on my screen, so I can't see you.
Councilman Lombardo has his hand raised.
All right, Councilman.
Yeah, you get them down by April. I don't think you're going to get any argument from any of us.
End of April.
Pardon me?
End of April.
Okay.
To be clear.
Okay. And 3 local contractors, that's good. And the list will be sent out. That's good too. But we're still under that, I don't have the right word for it, but obviously fires take precedence. So
If it's deemed that it's, it's a structure that, unsafe structure, and, working with the Summit County Building Department now with their building official. Unfortunately, we had one this morning, I think in Mr. Kamer's ward on South Main, right across from Emerling, an apartment building that looks like we're going to have to get that down immediately. That's separate and above of these funds, though, sir.
Well, that's my question. If there was a fire, God forbid, tomorrow, does that preempt some of those 76, or if we get this list of 76?
Yeah, then you'll see.
Pardon me?
If we get this list of 76, they're going to come down. We have other funds for that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Lombardo. Any other questions or comments, Councilman DeShazer?
At one time, I remember the Veterans Fund, it was VA funds that were also utilized for demolition. Does any of that exist anymore anywhere?
I am not sure, but I'll get an answer for you, sir.
Sounds good. Any other questions or comments? All right. I'll go ahead and make a motion to suspend the rules on this with a favorable report.
Second.
All in favor of suspension of the rules?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right. Thank you. And Chris, please try to get that list to Sarah. I appreciate you.
I will.
Thank you. Sarah, moving on to the next one, please.
Item number 10 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for the construction of Kent Street Bridge rehabilitation and declaring an emergency.
Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. Yes, the Kent Street Bridge is in Ward 10. It's a bridge, excuse me, over the Little Cauga River off of Case Avenue. It's between Bank Street and Case, excuse me. And what this entails is we applied for bridge funding, which out of a $900,000 project, the bridge funding is going to cover about $675,000 of that. So what is going to get, this bridge will get a brand new deck. We are going to increase the sidewalk size to allow more pedestrian access down to Case. And we are going to be doing some work this year on that park. So we will connect the sidewalk all the way down to the corner to allow the people in the neighborhood that cross this bridge to get down to the park. So it will be some, like I said, it's a full deck replacement, some beam rehab underneath, not full replacement of the bridge, but this is definitely going to extend the useful life of this bridge for many years to come.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions or comments for Mr. Luddle? Anyone else online with us or in council chambers? All right. Consent okay? Or?
Yes, sir. That's fine.
All right.
Motion for consent.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. Moving on to number 11, please.
Item number 11 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee, after publicly advertising for bids, to enter into a contract or contracts to replace lead service lines throughout the city and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. This is a mandate by the Ohio EPA and US EPA, and what it's called is galvanized requiring replacement. So any residential home that we have in our system that has a galvanized service from the lawn strip into the house and connecting to the meter that was downstream of a lead service. And we've talked about lead services for a few years now, of getting all the lead out of our system. Well, what they have found is an old galvanized service basically in the front yard of these homes could have deposits of lead in them built over years. So this funding that we are getting is 53% of this funding will be forgiven by the Ohio EPA, and then and then the other funding, 47%, which is about 11 million of this project, is a 40-year loan at 0% interest. The very important thing about this program is this was always the responsibility of the property owner, whether it was a homeowner that owned this home or it was a landlord, a rental home, and this could have cost the homeowner up to right now prices are about $3,500 to replace one of these. So we are going to go through and we're going to replace these, and also we have this has to be done by 2027, but what I could tell you is we're going to be done way ahead of schedule. And I got to give Water a lot of kudos for applying for this money to get this. It's going to help everybody, and also not only improve water quality of these homes, but reduce that liability, because we've all seen it. They get a leak, we tell them they got to fix it. We don't want to shut their water off, but if they don't fix it in a timely manner, and some of them don't have the funds, it could leak for days, weeks, and sometimes even months. And the weather we had over the weekend, if you have one leaking on the sidewalk, it's going to create a hazard to the traveling public. So this is a great program. We plan to bid this. We're going to split it out over multiple contractors. Hopefully we can attract some, smaller contractors, maybe even minority contractors to do this work. Probably 3 or 4 contracts we'll put out to do this work. Yeah, this is a great program, and obviously I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Committee members, any questions or comments? Anybody else online with us? Chris, I got to ask this question. So basically you take the old line out and you put in a brand new line that goes right to the basement, correct?
That's right. It's going to be replaced with copper. So I've seen some contractor directionally drill. I've seen some contractors where they've had what they call like a strain relief. It's something that goes over the galvanized and actually hooks to it. And I've seen them pull one out and pull the copper in, right? So I've seen contractors do this without even open cutting the front yard. They will have some restoration on the lawn strip, but they go through typically the same hole, the foundation. They put some water plug in to make sure it doesn't leak. Obviously, they're down 6 feet below because of the frost line, and they tie it right into the meter, and it's brand new copper with a brand new shutoff valve. So it is a nice system that they're doing.
Yeah, very impressive. I mean, I can only imagine what it's like, especially with the older homes that are like 100+ years old. Yep. Wow. All right. No questions or comments. Is consent okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, committee.
Motion for consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second for consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Anybody opposed? All All right, moving on to 12. Sarah, please.
Item number 12 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for the construction of the 2025 water main replacement program and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. This is this is our annual water main replacement program. We choose these various water mains on our critical break history. We have we have kept track for these on some of these streets for quite a few years, and when you see 1, 2, 3, or 4 breaks on a particular line, it gets moved up in the priority list, and we go ahead and replace these water mains. The streets this year, they're going to be included in the contract are Adkins Court, Cedar Court, Comstock Court, Delia, parts of Delia, not the whole thing, part of Dover, Grant Street, Greenvale, South Hawkins, Highview, Ido, Indianola, Inman, Ivan Place, Jewett Court, Norma Avenue, Ontario Street, Redwood Avenue, Rockwood Drive, Russell Avenue, Sherlow Drive, and Store Avenue. Obviously, these are all over the city. So the project also, they will pick up 18 lead services or unknown services, 6 galvanized services while they do this program. So we will bid this to include all of those. The current rate through WSRLA is just under 3% loan. And like I said, we had this program in the capital budget for the estimate of $3 million of our water funds.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions or comments for Mr. Luddle? Any other council members online with us? All right. Is consent okay on this one?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Motion for consent.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, we'll put that on the consent agenda. Sarah?
Item number 13 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for construction of the Rubber City Heritage Trail Project Phase 2 and declaring an emergency.
Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. I think all of you are familiar with Phase 1 that ended the Rubber City Heritage Trail that ended over by the new fire station number 2, right there near the intersection of Arlington and Exchange. This project will allow us to create a crosswalk there at Arlington and Exchange. This will be a 10-foot wide multi-use trail. Once it crosses there, it will travel north, paralleling Exchange, and then it will head west behind Dave's Market and create this 4,400-foot trail behind Dave's Market, circle all the way around, and then when it comes back and starts to head south again, it will end at Exchange and Huntington, which is just near Fountain or just near the expressway there. It will not cross Exchange, it will end right there. And then future years, Phase 3, it will travel south. By that time, the waste transfer station will be gone, and then this will take you around under Beacon Street. But this is Phase 2. Real excited about it. It's going to bid this spring. Construction will start this summer. It should get close to wrapping up by the end of the year, at least all the trail, but the amenities and some of the restoration, the grass planting around the trail won't be done until spring, most likely of 2026. We are going to install conduits through this for future fiber optics. It will have park benches, it will have trash cans along the trail for the users of this trail.
Thank you, Chris. Committee members, any questions or comments for Mr. Luddle? Anyone else with us today? All right. Consent agenda okay on this one?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Motion for consent.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for consent. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, we'll put that on the consent agenda. Moving forward.
Item number 14 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for construction of the sanitary sewer reconstruction 2024 project and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Sarah. Chris?
This is our annual sewer reconstruction project. These assets were identified through our CMOM program, which is our inspection, TV, and clean. We have to do every 5 years. We do rank these assets and critical defects from 1 to 5. So in this year's project, there'll be about 2,000 feet of lining through various assets throughout the city. We are going to abandon part of the old interceptor along Beach Street, along the trail by Beach Street. We had a project this year where we connected the established on the corner of Perkins and Howard there. We got them off of that old infrastructure so that we're going to eliminate a large piece of this sewer that's not being used anymore. It'll be filled. But the biggest thing is just the rehab of the sewer. We did get about 36% of this covered by OPWC, which is a grant. It's not a loan. And we do apply for these every year. Been very successful applying for these grants because when you don't have to open cut these sewers or dig up a road and you can line it, it obviously saves a lot of money on these projects. So this is just our annual program. It will bid real soon, and construction will start this summer.
All right, thank you. Committee members, questions or comments for Mr. Luddle? Anyone else with us today? All right, what are you looking at for this one, Chris?
Consent's fine.
Consent.
Motion for consent.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for consent. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. Moving on to number 15, please.
Item number 15 is a resolution declaring it necessary to improve certain streets between certain termini 2025 arterial collector resurfacing program by resurfacing such streets with asphaltic concrete 402, 404 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Sarah. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. We're going to go through each one of these, but I just want to preface 15, 16, and 18 all are they're all with our resurfacing program this year. The first one that was just read in is our arterial collector resurfacing. This will allow us to start the assessment process, notify all the property owners. They will just receive an estimate of this project. And then once the project is done, after a year, there's a year warranty on the project, they will be sent a bill for this. So just a couple clarifying things. For residential homeowners that are on homestead, they will not be charged an assessment. They are exempt. So if any of your homeowners get a bill and they are homestead, that could have been made in error and they need to contact us. But like I said, this is just an estimate. So as you know, this starts the process. By passing this piece of legislation, allows us to notify the abutting property owners. Then they have so long to send back any type of an objection. If there is objections in any one of these, and this is the arterial, we will hold a hearing. They will come in. A lot of times it's a corner lot where they don't feel like they're benefited by the resurfacing. We can usually talk through all those, but the whole process will take about 6 weeks. So what you'll see after this piece of legislation, we'll bring back another piece of legislation, which we call it the notice to proceed, and then we will present to you if there is any findings by the Assessment Equalization Board. If there is no objection, there is no objection, but it takes about 6 weeks. So we're looking to get this resurfacing started right early April. Hopefully the winter's over by then and the plants open up. It's been a difficult winter. I don't need to tell you that. So, but yeah, I will, with that, I'll take any questions on this first piece, sir.
All right, thank you, Chris. Committee members, Councilman Bolden?
Question I didn't realize. You mentioned homestead exemption. They don't pay street assessment. Is that just for arterials?
Resurfacing. Just on resurfacing.
Just on resurfacing?
Yes.
It doesn't matter, it's arterials, it's any resurfacing?
Right.
Okay, good to know, thank you.
Yep. And it
Thanks,
goes by
Council.
the county. So if the county says they're homestead, then we will fill that, you know? Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, suspension of the rules okay on this one?
I would appreciate to get this process started, sir.
Motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for suspension of the rules. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, moving on to the next piece, Sarah.
Item number 16 is a resolution declaring it necessary to improve certain streets between certain termini 2025 residential resurfacing program by resurfacing such streets with asphaltic concrete 402, 404, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Sarah. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is pretty much the same explanation to start the process. This is just the residential portion of our resurfacing program.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments? I don't see any. Anyone else? Chris, you just want to suspend the rules on all these pieces if it's up to the committee?
That would be fine, but on 17 is a little bit different explanation than 18, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to suspend the rules with a favorable report.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second for suspension of the rules. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thanks. Moving on to 17.
Item number 17 is an ordinance authorizing the service director or his designee to enter into a contractor contracts after publicly advertising for bids, utilizing purchasing consortiums, requesting and receiving requests for proposals, requesting or receiving quotes, and/or self-performing work for the purchase and application of asphaltic concrete, pavement removal, riser rings microsurfacing, partial depth resurfacing, and preventative maintenance for various streets in the 2025 resurfacing program, including alternates, approving specifications therefore, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Sarah. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This piece of legislation will allow us to advertise and bid the resurfacing program for 2025. It will also allow us to review those bids and award the contract. Other parts of this legislation will allow us to buy some of the necessary items that we need for the project. When the riser ring is a manhole riser, so if the resurfacing has to be, if the sewer riser ring needs to be adjusted, we buy those rings, and then we keep those in stock and we provide those to the contractor as needed. This also allows us to self-perform some of these small areas. We have our own paver now. We can do very small projects. This will allow us to buy the asphalt to do those projects. That paver was bought with IT4 funds, and we have our own roller. Obviously, we can't do major streets, but this allows us to buy that material. And when we talk about resurfacing, we did have 14 miles of carryover from last year. A lot of those 14 miles were put off because we were still working either on water mains or lead services. And obviously, we didn't pave a street that we were going to go back in and do a water main or a lead service. So those are the 14 miles. As soon as the asphalt plant's open, the contractor could start on those. And then this piece of legislation and everything we've talked about so far is another 34 miles. So total this year they'll be done is 48 miles. I would respectfully ask to suspend rules on this one too, so we can get this bid and awarded. So hopefully both projects will start about the same time. We do have a time limit that we put into the contract of 180 days, and that's why I want to get this thing going sometime in April. So we shouldn't be talking about any carryover next year. I mean, unless we run into a water main or something like that, but nothing like 14 miles.
All right, thank you, Chris. Committee members, any questions or comments? Any other council members with us today? All right, Chris is interested in suspension of the rules.
I'll make that motion to suspend the rules with a favorable report.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for suspension of the rules. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. Moving on to the next piece.
Item number 18 is a resolution declaring it necessary to improve certain streets between certain termini, 2025 unimproved street resurfacing program by treating the surface thereof with substances designed to preserve the surface and declaring an emergency.
Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our unimproved street piece. It matches number 15 and 16. So obviously, 15 was the arterial collector, which is the higher traveled street, and then 16 was residential. This is the unimproved. Unimproved, as you know, are the streets that typically don't have any storm sewers. There's no curbs. So this is different assessment rate for the unimproved streets. That's why we have separate piece of legislation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Committee members, any questions or comments for Mr. Luddle? Councilman Lombardo?
Just a comment, just to remind those listening, assessments can be paid all at one time, but then they also could be paid over over 5 years, twice
Correct.
a year.
Yep.
Okay.
But they will, like we talked before, that just because they get, it's not a bill they're getting this year for this year's program. It's just an estimate. We've had people get that and send it in. It's, that's not your bill, so it won't come till next year.
Okay.
After
February.
1 year after the warranty's over is when we send the bill.
Okay, good to know.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions or comments? All right. Chris, you're looking at suspension of the rules again?
Please.
Motion to suspend the rules with a favorable report.
Second.
I have a motion, a second for suspension of the rules. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. Number 19.
Item number 19 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of publicly advertising for bids with the Community, University, and Education Purchasing Association for the purchase of winter roadway de-icing materials, including roadway salt, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Sarah. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. We have exceeded our maximum quantity of salt this year, and this piece of legislation will allow us to buy another 3,000 tons. We purchase salt always about a year in advance, so this allotment of 3,000 will allow us to get a start onto next year. When we put in our quantities for purchase, we can go either 20% over that quantity or under that quantity. So to give you a little bit of history, in 2022/23, we requested 25,000 tons of salt. We purchased 25,700, okay? So we were right on the mark. Last year, we went into last year, or the 22-23-24 season, we were almost full of our salt domes. So we can't go too much. If we have a mild winter, then we have salt that's not covered, and we can't have that, right? So 2023-2024, we put in for 16,000, and that's what we purchased last year. This year, we put in for 17,000. So far this year, and we don't have it all delivered, but we have it all allotted, and we have trucks coming as we speak. We put in for 17,000, and there again, we can go 20% over or under. Well, we went to our max. We purchased another 3,400, which means we've purchased 20,400 this year. So this 3,000 will allow us, obviously, to finish out the year and to have salt on hand at the beginning of next year. It's been a difficult winter. I mean, I don't have to explain that to you. We've had a lot of 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inches of snow. And over the weekend with the ice, it's like all hands on deck. We did our level best. We tried a brine. It wasn't supposed to rain, but it started out at rain, and it washed off that brine. So we're going to try to use more brine. We've got some new products. We've got some new inserts and trucks that are going in to try to reduce the amount of salt we use every year. But I don't need to explain snow and ice to you. It's just been a rough one this year. But got to give all our people credit. I mean, we've had some guys and gals working 12-hour shifts, 3, 4, 5 days in a row. Seemed like we've had a lot of events on weekends, so they've been in here working overtime. But all in all, they've done a great job. this year, but that's kind of a long story to tell you why we need this extra 3,000 tons for the rest of the year and beginning of next year.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Committee members, any questions or comments for Mr. Luddle? Anybody else in chambers with us online? All right, suspension of the rules, okay, Chris?
I'd appreciate it, sir.
Sure.
So moved. Second.
All right, I have a motion, a second for suspension of the rules. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, well, thank you. We'll put that on the agenda for this evening, and I think that's all we have, so we are adjourned.
Our next committee today will be the Public Safety Committee. Those committee members are McKittrick, Kamer, Lombardo, Hannah, and Davis. We'll get started in just a moment. Okay, we're ready to begin the Public Safety Committee. Again, those committee members are McKittrick, Kamer, Lombardo, Hannah, and Davis. We do have all committee members present whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Clerk Biviano. I'd like to call the Public Safety Committee to order, and we have previous minutes to approve. I get a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have a couple pieces on the regular agenda. One will be continued time on. The other, we have the administration here that want to discuss this. It is the ordinance authorizing the mayor as designee to enter into a contract or contracts without publicly advertising for bids with Paul Weiss, Ricken Wharton, and Garrison LLP for the provision of a comprehensive use of force and community engagement assessment of the Akron Police Department and declaring an emergency. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam President, members of committee, and members of council. Wanted to come back before you and provide some more information and continued discussion about this important topic. Prior to bringing this legislation to council, the administration had reached out to several firms that do this kind of work, had identified Paul Weiss and 21st Century Policing as the strongest firm in our opinion, and had asked them to provide a written proposal, and that is, gave way to the legislation in front of the committee today. Since that time, and as part of our discussion, there has been discussion about what is the value that we're getting from this, and are they the strongest firm? And so what we have done over the last several weeks is go back to those firms that we originally reached out to, as well as some new firms, so for a total of 6 firms, and ask them for more about their qualifications. The amount of time that they would take and their timeline, their process around engagement, the teams that they would use, so that we can provide that information to council. So we provided that earlier today by email. So after that review, I still believe that Paul Weiss and 21st Century Policing are the strongest firm that we could use to move forward with this review. They offer an unparalleled level of expertise. But I will turn it over to Tony Ingram, our public safety strategist, to talk about this a little bit more.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chair, Madam President. As the Mayor mentioned, as we went through this process, we were really looking at this from a couple different areas, experience and expertise being one, timeliness being the other, and engagement being the third, and I'll talk briefly about all three. First, with respect to experience and expertise, the Paul Weiss team is made up of several government and Department of Justice officials. It includes the former U.S. Attorney General, making them a unique fit to the needs of Akron. They offer a team with extensive background in appropriate governance and accountability structures and have a renowned reputation for their assessment work, providing proactive counsel on complex issues. The 21 CP team is made up of former police professionals who are leading experts in the field of public safety, making them the strongest possible choice to partner with Paul Weiss. These are two expert teams who can provide Akron with the most comprehensive review possible that is specifically tailored to the city's needs. And I'll just add just a couple things to that. In my conversations with Chief, he was also aware of the expertise and the individuals who work with 21 CP, which I believe was one of the key reasons to bring him to the table, the Akron Police Department to the table, which is going to be critical as we move through this process. We can't move through this process without having their input, so that was an important factor. The other, with this level of expertise, we believe any recommendations that come out can be trusted both by the Akron Police Department and the community as well. So in that area, those were things that were important. With respect to time, the Paul Weiss and 21 CP Solutions team laid out a timeline of 5 to 6 months for this work. That means we can get started on this immediately, and the sooner we can get started, the sooner we can get the recommendations, and sooner we can get to implementation. And then lastly, for me, what I thought was critical was the area of engagement. And the level of engagement that is being proposed by the Paul Weiss team with both our law enforcement officers and our community is unmatched. As you all have an opportunity to look through the various proposals, you will see, and what really struck me is their engagement process is going to be one of 6 weeks where they're actively engaging with us. They're partnering with us in this engagement strategy, as opposed to some of the others who you will see will be one-off, some just simply a virtual conversation. And I felt that was important to get to the point of trust again between the police department, this community, and to help us move forward. So those are really sort of the areas and frame in which I looked and others, a part of the administration, looked at as we decided that Paul Weiss and 21 CP remains the best firm for this work.
And just a couple other things, and thank you, Tony. I know the question of cost has come up, and as we went through this process over the last few weeks, in particular because the cost of the proposal from Paul Weiss and 21 CP was already out there, we didn't ask any of the other firms to kind of price out their cost. And as part of that also, you know, this is not a service that is being bid out, right? This is a special service that we are looking to identify the strongest team possible to be able to help us with this review. And we're seeking to compare the qualifications that we've reviewed. And so, you know, with that being said, I really feel like the value that the city will receive for the price tag of $640,000 is appropriate, right? I do want to also note that we did kind of go back and clarify that number, $640,000, is the number. I know there was discussion around the contingency number. We don't feel that will be needed, and that have confirmed that with the law firm. And so the number is $640,000. And then just, I guess the final point I wanted to make is, I know another piece that we've discussed has been around implementation. And this is really critical, right? Because if we're making a significant investment like this, we need to make sure that there's value that comes about as a result of it. You know, again, without prejudging what's going to come out of it, it is my hope that we are able to see real change from that, and is my commitment to put the full weight of this office behind what recommendations come from this process. To the extent there are rule changes or policy changes, those are things that can be done administratively. To the extent that there are recommendations around training or increased funding, those are things that we can debate and discuss and move forward through partnership between the administration and this body. To the extent that there are changes that need to be made to the charter, that is something that we can all work on together. And to the extent that there are, and I'm not suggesting there will be, but it's possible, particularly in regard to the discipline process, there are changes that are recommended with regard to the contract. We would need to reopen the contract and go through that process with the union. And that's also why it's important to really have that law enforcement engagement, have those opinions at the front end of the process. So I know that, that's been a topic of much conversation. I think that we should work together to really make sure that that implementation is as strong as possible. I know we have the oversight board, which has, monthly meetings, and the auditor's office, and obviously this body has a significant interest in the implementation as well. And so making sure that if and when, hopefully, we make this investment, that we are all able to go out and tell the community what came of it, and without, claiming that it will solve every issue or resolve every issue, because we know that it is not a panacea, but that we will be able to justify the cost and the value ultimately. With regard to the information that we shared today, we are not asking for a vote today, but in the interest of moving forward, my hope is that we can move forward with this proposal by the end of the month, hopefully at the next meeting. So with that, that's what we have, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, gentlemen. Are there any questions or comments from any committee members or any other council members? Councilman Hanna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see that you did submit Greenbridge Consulting and Jensen Hughes. Are those two other firms that we might consider?
Jensen Hughes was one of the firms that we originally reached out to. We did not hear back from them when we originally reached out in the late fall, but they responded when we reached out this time. Greenbridge sent a proposal unsolicited, but we included it here.
Okay. Thanks for coming to this committee meeting, Mr. Mayor. I haven't seen you all year. Thank you so much. It's good to see you.
I'm here at your pleasure, sir. I'm here available upon request.
Okay, so we're back at square one because you still think that your choice is the best choice. Is that correct?
I would say the administration's choice, not my choice. And we've tried to provide information and justification and rationale for why we believe this is the strongest choice. But part of sharing all the information that was shared this morning is to help allow this council to make that decision as well. Council is authorized to approve the contract or not to approve the contract, right? But this is in the interest of providing as much rationale for why the administration believes this is the best entity to move forward with. Yes.
So you say that the other two firms, they did not respond. Did you reach out to any other consulting firms? Did you reach out to, because these two, the two that you said, Greenbridge Consulting and Jensen Hughes, they had some issues and they didn't respond. Did you think about reaching out to other firms?
No, those firms did respond as well as several others. Tony, if you can.
Councilman, there should be a total of 6 that you should have received. It was all in one email. Those were just 2. The Paul Weiss should be in there as well. In addition, Transparency Matters, and there are a couple others. There should be a total of 6. There's 5. There should be 6 in there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5. I only see 5.
I will send the 6th. It should have been included.
And so 2 of those, they didn't respond.
All of them responded. So The 5 that you have, plus the one that did not get in there, that I will make sure they all responded with the one-page document summary of what their proposal would absolutely look like. So yes, they responded the second time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Lombardo.
Thank you. So I just wanted to know, what exactly is the order here? Are we just reviewing these proposals here on the email, and then again, well, not next week, but in a few weeks, we'll be possibly voting or more discussions? I just, I'm kind of confused where we're at.
Sure. I mean, ultimately, that is up to the committee and up to council, right? So I don't want to presume for council. But our intention in providing this was to provide, one was to look back at to do more of our homework and show more of our homework, right? I believe that we did that in the initial part of the process, but then to also share that with council. And so after having reviewed what has been shared by these 6 firms, we still believe that the 21st Century and Paul Wise proposal is the strongest proposal. If council does not want to move forward with that proposal, then council does not want to move forward with that proposal. But that is where we are. But we wanted to make sure to share that information that was provided by each of those 6 firms.
Okay. All right. So next week's the 17th will be off, and then it'll be the 24th. Okay. I just got to tell you, Mayor, so over the last month or so, I watched a lot of football, including last night, right?
So, some days, Councilman, I feel like Patrick Mahomes.
You're not that elusive. So, as crazy it may sound, what we have before us with the use of force policy, it's kind of like a football game to me. So, obviously our police, they're always on defense. Criminals are on offense. It just seems like, what we're saying here to me is, us common folk, I guess, we're trying to tell the defense how to play the game. Like for instance, whether it's, the Police Oversight Board, or, we had some other legislation coming before us with the deputy police chief wanting that buyout contract, and now this. It just seems like, we're telling the defense, okay, no more blitzing. Can't blitz anymore. And if they pass, not allowed to intercept. No more interceptions. In fact, if they run, can't tackle. I don't know, I think the police may be saying, or the defense, may be saying, I guess we start pulling flags or something. Because we're not in their world. And God bless them for doing what they do. But I think from what I've seen as far as statistics go, and I've mentioned them in a prior meeting, we've had so many resignations in 2020 and then 21 and 22. It got from 5 to, I can't remember the exact numbers, 11, 16, 19, 24 last year, something like that. And so the defense is quitting. And that's why I've said, in my speeches before, that we need to be careful what we wish for here, because defense wins you championships. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman. Any other committee members? Okay, I'm going to go in this order. It'll be Councilman DeShazer, then Linda Mobian, and then Bruce Bolden, in the order that I said. Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilman. Yeah, I for one, I was struggling with this in the beginning because of the fact that it seemed to be an open-end kind of a spend. So you're saying now that it's been capped somewhat at 640,000? Okay.
And Councilman, we can amend the legislation to reflect that, just to be clear.
Okay. The other points that I had was the engagement, cost, outcomes, but one was implementation. How do we actually implement it? So you're telling me that there's an implementation plan now that we're hearing now that we didn't hear before. Is that what I'm hearing?
What I said today, sir, I believe I have said before. I think it is, it is difficult to lay out like how the implementation would work before we know what the recommendations would be.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been thinking about the recommendations in types of like categories, right? So, there are things that I can do by myself as mayor or the chief can do as the chief, right? The rules and policy changes. And then there are things we would have to do with council. There are things that would require the union. There are things that require the charter. And then my intention would be for us to have, a very public tracker and then regular ways that we could report to council, report to the oversight board and the auditor's office. But I believe what I've said before.
Okay. And the other part of justification for me of, people who've signed on. So the administration signed on to this. You're saying that the oversight group, they are with you. Is that right?
Yes, we had, when we announced this, we had a quote from our oversight board chair, Kent Boyd.
Okay.
And I just want to be very clear. I don't know if he was speaking in his capacity or the capacity of the entire board. I imagine he was speaking in his personal capacity.
Okay. And also the police administration and the union.
I would hesitate to speak for the union. I know the union also included a statement in the press release, but I know, I would hesitate to speak for the union. Mm-hmm. I've learned that's a bad idea.
But you kind of feel like they heard you when what you were saying in terms of this being a tool that we can use that could galvanize our community and bring them together.
Where everybody needs to be at the table. I think the best way of saying it, I heard from somebody today, we all have a stake in it.
Okay. Well, that's the only comment that I had because, I thought that, the way it was before, if we had an open-ended kind of a price tag and the contingency, I thought people were very uncomfortable with that. That's what I was hearing from folks who've called me. And I think it gives me a whole lot better feeling if I know where to draw the parameters and say, hey, this is specifically what it's going to be. And at the end of the day, this is what's going to be implemented. So we have some starting point. So thanks. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilwoman Amobian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. As far as the proposal is concerned, I thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Ingram and Chief Harding for being there. And I thank you for more information. I think that's what was requested by some council members. And with regard to the implementation, I think it's essentially what you talked about before with the rollout. I think I've heard you said this before, but I think it's been clear today that the recommendations that you control will be implemented. That's important to me. And I think it's helpful for people to remember this is not guided by the administration or the council. The citizens of Akron are asking us to do more to protect our citizens from officers who are essentially acting as rogue officers, doing things that we don't agree with. And what we're saying is that we have more officers than not who are good officers following the rules, but we have some that we need to have more guardrails around. So with that in mind, I am in favor of this proposal. I thank you for the additional information, and I thank you for reaching out to the additional consultants and providing more information. And I think you're saying that we have 2 more weeks to call you, ask more questions, or do whatever it is that the council members need before we take a vote. But not only that, the price tag has come down some as well. So with all of the things that Mr. Ingram identified as the criteria used to identify this comprehensive proposal, and it seems to be the most comprehensive one I've heard of, um, I'm on board and I will reach out if I have more questions. But I thank you for the additional information. I thank you for being as strong and saying that we're going to implement the things that we can implement. And we're going to do those things that we need to do. If we need to go for a charter amendment, if we need to reopen the union contract, all of those things we're willing to do to provide the additional help to protect our citizens. And thank you for this. Um, Additionally, there was one other point I wanted to make. I'm getting a little young, so I can't remember everything off the top of my head. But there was one thing else I wanted to say. Oh, the independent auditor and Mr. Kemp, all of those individuals are on board, and they all have come to council to express their support for this proposal. So I don't know what else we can say, but I think the citizens of Akron are asking us to take whatever proactive steps we can to ensure that we are providing safe uh, uh, coverage and protection of our citizens and providing all the necessary training and all the things that are needed so that we are clear on what the policy is. Whatever it is that's being done, this is the policy. This is what we expect for you to follow, those kinds of things. So I don't think we're being unfair to anybody. I think we'll just give hopefully at the end of the day, we have some clear guidelines, clear instructions for all of our officers to follow. And again, I have never seen this as a panacea. It is not the answer to all of our problems, but it is a part of the puzzle to get things under control. So again, thank you very much for this.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Councilman Bolden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing this and giving us the information here. A number of people that I've talked to have said, how can we just go with one person and how do they do this? And I tried to explain to them that I don't think the mayor's office just picked one company and targeted them. And to see this, that we have this information, that we can say to constituents and residents that, there was a lot of, I don't think you went about this lightly, let's put it that way. And I'm sure you didn't. But to let people know that and that to see these proposals ourselves and why you ended up with where we did, and with the Paul Weiss and the 21 CP, it comes down, of course, how we interact with people and the implementation, and we all know that. That's the big issue. And the buy-in that we get from the union, from the police, from everybody, and the residents. We have to do something. There's no two ways about it. And I appreciate the information. That helps. I know we have to do something. I've heard the issues I have, most people realize we need to do something. They're worried about the cost of it. They're worried about, are we picking the right person? My likelihood is, are we picking the right person to pave your street? We got to go by what we know, and we do these things by researching it. This proves the research was there, so we can say, look, it's right here. We've got it. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to coming to a decision here by the end of the month. And thanks again for getting this information to us today.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilwoman Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mayor and administration, for coming in another time. Some of the information you provided kind of got me thinking about a couple questions that I've been hearing in my neighborhood. And residents, I think, yes, we're concerned about the price tag of this, but they're also very concerned about the price tag of lawsuits. They've been coming about, with a lack of having this. And one of the things you brought up, Mr. Ingram, was proactive counsel. How will the proactive counsel of Paul Weiss help to curtail some of this extra legal activity that we've been having? Will it, I guess, is the question.
He passed the question to me. No, look, one of the things that that we've talked about a little bit more internally the last few weeks is that we've talked about how the city is uninsured when it comes to claims regarding use of force. And in order to get insurance, one thing that may be helpful to us in that process is to show that we have gone through this recent review. And so I think that's one benefit. We have the numbers of, $6.65 million that has been spent on settlements from 2020 to the present. And, I think that is obviously a significant amount of money. Again, without prejudging the recommendations, I can't say specifically how the council would assist, but I think that's particularly, I guess what I would say is that I think this is as close to having the Department of Justice as you can have with an outside firm that has such significant high-level Department of Justice experience and investigations experience. And so in my mind, that's what a law firm does, is help advise you on risk, right? And so hopefully, and again, that was one of the things that we saw early on, which was it seemed like, there's not that many firms that do this work already, but then it seems like it's kind of an innovation in the field to have a police consulting firm that's very well respected work with like such an experienced law firm and team. Like we didn't really see that anywhere else. And so we view that as kind of unique and expensive, but worth the value.
I appreciate that. And I've been monitoring some of the news about the Cleveland situation. We definitely don't want to be in. This being proactive is better. I agree with that. Another question I had quickly is another criticism that I've heard that I just want to get out there is that Paul Weiss has tended to provide recommendations that mirror other, each district or municipality that comes in, asks for recommendations, they tend to get the exact same recommendations. How can you as an administration ensure that what we get back is uniquely Akron? Like this money we're paying is for something customized and very hands-on. And it sounds like that 6 weeks of engagement, very important to that. What can you do to ensure that we get something back that is not cookie cutter, but uniquely Akron?
I will say, and I'll ask Tony to speak to it as well, but I will say in the conversations that I've had, my sense has been of people who are engaging thoughtfully and who are engaging critically and who are not like thinking in a cookie cutter manner, right? One of the first things that they asked when I spoke with them was just tell us about Akron and talking about Akron, but then coming back and saying, really asking with a level of depth, who are the organizations who you think you need to look at, but then them doing their own research into that as well. And so, that hasn't been my impression or expertise or experience. I will say though, I know one of the questions that we've had is about, what the results have been in other communities. And I know we shared a document, I believe in early January, that summarized some of the experience of both firms. I do think that, perhaps individually, going back and having conversations with some of those communities and seeing what those experiences, that might be appropriate over the next 2 weeks, like testimonials, not from the firm, right? Because I think they've provided what they've provided, but I think just digging into some of those communities. So that may be appropriate.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Councilman Lombardo, you have something else?
Sure. I just wanted to push back on Councilwoman Amobian's comments on what officers were charged with being rogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other, Councilman Fusco, please. Go ahead.
Just a question. If you could please provide for council the breakdown. You had mentioned 6.6 million since 2020. If we have a breakdown of that, I think that's a tough decision that a mayor has to face in terms of going to court, not going to court, and one has to weigh, the possible outcomes, et cetera. But it does seem to be more and more, and I don't believe Akron is the only city out there who experiences this. I know other cities out there as well are seeing this occur as well. So that would be helpful. Thanks.
Yes, we can provide that, Councilman, and, you're right, it is, a difficult decision to weigh. I will say that, all of those decisions in my time have been made, on the advice of counsel and the law department, weighing those risks and trying to consider the exposure to taxpayer funds. So, but we can certainly provide that.
Thanks, Councilman. Council President Somerville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mayor, just a question, if you could provide to council, and I'm sure you probably don't have it right now, can we get the breakdown of that $640,000 in terms of how much is going to 21CP, how much is going to Paul Wise firm?
I don't know that we have a breakdown per firm. I know that they had a breakdown that was like by area, like the engagement, the review, like the sections of the work.
Okay.
So I believe we can provide that. I know we did with each of these entities. The reason you have like these 2-page summaries is we let them know that there was information that we were going to share publicly, and so we asked them to to share because a number of them put like confidential and proprietary on their documentation. So I think we would need to check back and see if they're comfortable sharing, because some of it is like their work product around, how they structure their fees. But we can try to provide something around that.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Jane
Yeah,
Davis.
just a quick question. If this passes, council, when would they get started?
I believe almost immediately. I don't know that it, is immediate, but within a matter of weeks.
Okay.
And we have throughout this process, remained in touch with them on a weekly basis, just kind of letting them know where we're at. And, so.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman, if I could just make one more point.
Yes, Mayor.
Councilman Fusco reminded me of it. So while there certainly are litigation that ends in settlements, there also is litigation that sometimes doesn't. So there was, as part of the litigation over incident that happened on Copley Road, there was a settlement, and as part of that settlement, the city committed to reviewing its crowd management policy, so a separate policy. And the city previously, last fall, entered into a contract with Spencer Fomby, a consultant in this area, who was kind of jointly agreed on by the parties in this lawsuit. So as part of that, and so as not to really confuse everyone, there is a public forum that is being scheduled for Tuesday, February 25th from 5 to 7 p.m. at Garfield CLC, specifically around the crowd management policy. It's not, it's not the end of the process. It's really for people to be able to share their perspectives. And then Mr. Fomby will put together a draft policy in consultation with the police department. And then there will be a public comment period of 60 days during which people can share their thoughts on the policy that ultimately is suggested. Again, the structure of this is kind of different because it was a result of the litigation, and so that 60-day comment period, the public forum, all of those things. But I did want to, as we've been talking about the use of force piece, I want to make sure we're not confusing people in the public about those. So that there's a press release that's going out, I think, today, and I just wanted to make sure, because you're going to be hearing about it and saying, well, we're still waiting on this piece. So I just want to be clear about that. So.
Thank you. Councilman Fusco.
Thanks. So what else did we commit to on this thing? I heard the piece about February 25th.
Yep.
And then after, is there other things that we have to do that we agreed to on top of this?
I don't think, like, substantively, like, we didn't say the policy is going to look like X and Y and Z, right? But I think we did say the policy will be consistent with the First Amendment or something to that regard, because obviously it has to be. But the process was more or less what was agreed upon in that litigation. We can, it's a public court filing, we can share the order there that lays that out. But basically, it's what I laid out, which is a public forum, a mutually agreed upon expert, and that comment period.
Thank you.
Thanks for that information. Councilman Hanna.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, could you answer this question for me, please? Why do we need an outside firm to come into our city to tell us what we need to do concerning police reform?
I think that at the end of the day, I think it's two things. I think that having an entity that is independent of the administration, independent of the police department, independent of any specific body in the community, is valuable, right? Because it brings a level of neutrality. And hopefully, again, if they have experience and legitimacy, hopefully buy-in. If everyone has a voice at the table, hopefully buy-in. But then I think secondly, having experts who have worked on this day in and day out, I think is very valuable. And I think that, again, we would be able to, and I want to be very clear, there's across all of these proposals, there's a lot of very competent people. But I think, again, to me, Paul Wisen 21CP is the strongest, but there's a lot of expertise. And so, I think when we have conversations, we can say, this seems appropriate to me or this seems inappropriate, but actually reducing that community feedback or law enforcement feedback into a policy or practices that can be implemented takes expertise. And I think, we owe it to ourselves to have the strongest level of expertise. So I think it's those two things, independence and expertise.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman. I don't see anybody else with their hand raised. Mr. Ingram, I thank you for your extra work on this and the other information that was brought forth. I urge all the council members to review what was sent to us, and if you have any questions, please forward those to me or forward those to Mr. Ingram. I do know that this is still a hot topic. Several times a week, I continue to get phone calls, text messages. People see me and ask me. There still is a very big concern about the price tag in regard to this, especially with the unknowns that we're facing nationally and a federal level right now. So, but I urge all members to look at that. And if we could get a motion for continued time on this.
Motion for time?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We will continue time on that, and we have two new pieces that come before us. The first piece is an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts with Dr. Sangan Jananvenich to provide clinical advisory services for the police and fire divisions, peer support programs, and declaring an emergency. Captain McCosey, is this your wheelhouse, sir?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the council. This is a contract for clinical advisory services. If you recall, not long ago, we were finally able to get our peer support groups up and running for the police and fire departments. And as a part of that, the state law requires that we do have a clinical advisor, an actual doctor, to advise the team, and then they work more or less under her guidance. So this contract is for a 3-year term. It ends in 2027, so it provides for services from the beginning of this year all the way through June 29th of 2027.
Very good. Do we have any questions from any committee members or any other council members? What's your pleasure on this, sir?
We will ask for suspension of the rules so that we can move forward with the contract.
We have a recommendation from the committee.
I'll make the motion to suspend the rules with a favorable report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for suspension of the rules with a favorable report. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will get that before council this evening. And we have another piece to come before us today, an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of publicly advertising for bids with Erich Jackson for professional IT consulting services and declaring an emergency. Captain McCosey.
Yes, sir. Had a contractual relationship with Eric Jackson for quite some years. He has worked on all manner of systems and platforms for the police department, the fire department, and for our 911 center. This contract is actually just an ask to add $15,000 this year. It's what we're budgeting for him for 2025. But due to the previous contracts and the total amount spent, we're coming to you for approval for that contract.
Thanks, Captain. Do we have any questions by committee members or council members? What's your pleasure on this, sir?
We would ask for suspension of the rules on this so we can get moving on it. It's for this year. So.
Is there a motion from the committee?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I can see that Councilwoman Amobian has her hand raised.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman, go right ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I had a difficult time unmuting. Finding the hand raise. Is this the total contract for this year? Did it run out? Is that what you're saying?
The terms of his contract ran out on December 31st. And this is an amendment to that, which makes it all one contract, and the total amount of that contract across 3 years was $65,000.
$65,000 for 3 years?
Yes.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions before we go for a motion here? We have a motion for suspension of the rules?
I'll make that motion to suspend the rules with a favorable report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for suspension of the rules with a favorable report. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll get that out to this evening before council. Thanks so much for coming down and joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, members.
And we have nothing further to come before public safety. We will be adjourned. Thank you.
Our final committee meeting of the day is the Budget and Finance Committee. Those committee members are Lombardo, Amobian, Fusco, Boyes, and Bolden, and we'll get started in just a few minutes here. Thank you.
You know, I think we need citizens.
They might start talking about us because I'm going to ask you to hold my hand because I'm freezing.
Okay, we're ready to begin the Budget and Finance Committee. Again, those committee members are Lombardo, Amobian, Fusco, Boyes, and Bolden. We do have all committee members present whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. I'd like to call the Budget and Finance meeting to order. And with that, can I have an approval of last week's meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Three pieces coming before us. The first being an ordinance authorizing the Director of Law or her designee to enter into a contractor contracts without the formality of publicly advertising for bids for the provision of professional services necessary or attendant to the provision of legal services to the City of Akron during the year 2025 and declaring an emergency. Our Director of Law, Deb Matz, is in the house.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. The purpose of this request is so that I have the ability to enter into agreements with attorneys to represent the city in various matters, generally litigation, but also collective bargaining agreements, other sorts of negotiations, or perhaps even mediations in order to resolve legal matters. This is not for the payment of settlements. It's not for the payment of the group that we've just been discussing. These would be independent counsel representing the city. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And again, is this for areas of other than what our city has expertise in?
Well,
or is it
it's not so much expertise as bandwidth.
Okay.
Because
more sources.
With respect to litigation especially, sometimes it is incredibly complicated, and it is also incredibly time consuming. And when I think about the amount of time and resources that I have available to me within the law department, you know, that their bandwidth is what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And they do handle a lot of stuff in-house. They handle some of the arbitrations in-house. They handle some of the litigation in-house. And to the extent that we can, we do. But
Sure.
There's only so many hours in the day.
This is true. So when you're talking bandwidth, it's more collaboration with, our city attorneys collaborating with the outside law firms.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. Sure. Do we have any questions from our committee members? Yes. Councilman Fusco.
Yeah, is this the same as last year, or is it an increase?
I think it's about the same as last year.
It's the same. In terms of the amount of attorneys that we have on board, I know we haven't seen the operating budget yet, but this I assume is a 25 expenditure, obviously. And so, without seeing that, are we going to be level on the amount of attorneys we have? Would that help reduce this if we'd have more attorneys that would handle litigation for us as opposed to farming that out? It's kind of a management question, I guess.
Right.
But just curious.
Yeah, no, I get what you're asking. I don't know that adding more attorneys in-house necessarily would solve the problem.
Could create more problems, huh? I'm joking. Bad joke. I'm sorry.
Understood.
Bad joke.
But the number of attorneys I have currently is level. And I don't have, I have, I think, one one hole in my staff on the civil side and maybe one hole in my staff on the criminal side. And the plan is to fill those, but it won't completely obviate the need for outside counsel.
Okay. Yeah, it just, like I say, it just seems as though there is this rise in lawsuits against cities, around policing, et cetera. And, like I said, there's a rise, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is, but I don't know how you manage that, and that's why you are where you're at, and I'm where I'm at. But, giving it some thought, I guess, I don't know, it kind of makes sense.
That's it's always a continued source of conversation amongst my staff and I as to what they can, what they can handle versus what they think we need to farm out. They're always involved in the cases that get farmed out, though, because I find that keeps the expense of outside counsel down. We handle the discovery. We're present at the depositions. We do a lot of the motion drafting. And so it really truly is, as Councilman Lombardo said, a collaboration between my staff and the outside counsel.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Not seeing any other questions from other council members. So your pleasure on this would be to...
Consent is fine.
Consent agenda. Can I have a motion for consent?
Motion for consent?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Very good. We'll put that on the consent agenda. Thank you for coming today. Our second item is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of a bond of the city in a principal amount not to exceed $6,200,000 for sale to the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund of the State of Ohio to finance the costs of the sanitary sewer reconstruction 2024 project, pledging certain revenues from the city's wastewater system on a subordinate basis to secure the payment of the principal of and interest on the bond, and authorizing the execution and delivery of the bond, the trust agreement and other documents, and the taking of other actions related to the issuance and sale of the bond, and declaring an emergency. We have, I know, our service director, Chris Little, but also our deputy finance director, Mike Wheeler. You're taking this?
Yeah, I'll take this one.
Okay.
And Chris is here and can answer additional questions as need be. But the primary intent of this piece of legislation is to continue with the 2024 project as it's stated in the clause, and to issue the debt for $6.2 million. Right now, rates are at about 3.18%, which is kind of an estimate. We won't know until it's settled and executed. But with that, happy to take any questions.
Okay. Is there any questions from Budget and Finance Committee members or any other council members? I don't see any. Very good. So your pleasure on this would be to consent agenda?
Consent's fine.
Okay.
We haven't bid it. This is direct in relationship to number 14 that we talked about in public service.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to pass legislation for the bond.
Thank you. Can I get a motion for consent, please?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Very good. Consent agenda. Our third and final piece is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of a bond of the city in a principal amount not to exceed $10 million for the sale to the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund of the State of Ohio to finance the cost of renewable energy facility polymer system improvements, pledging certain revenues from the city's wastewater system on a subordinate basis to secure the payment of the principal of and the interest on the bond, and authorizing the execution and delivery of the bond, the trust agreement, and other documents, and the taking of other actions related to the issuance and the sale of the bond, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Luddle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. This is the bond principal and amount had to be modified. We passed this legislation back in July of 2024 for our polymer upgrades at KB Bioenergy that manages all our sludge from WRF. At the time, we worked with Ohio EPA, DEFA, and we put in that legislation this would be a 45-year bond. After reviewing that, we can only apply for a bond for the useful life of the system. Typically, we go 30, sometimes 20, and then we've got ones out to 45. So we did work with them, and the useful life of this system we feel is 36 years. So this isn't going to be, so we have to modify this legislation. It will be for a 36-year bond because of the useful life of the system. So it's better than we thought. 45 would have been great, but 36 is obviously better than 30 or 20. So that's all this is doing. We would like to suspend the rules. This project has been bid and award to get this modification to the state of Ohio.
Very good. Thank you. Would you like to comment on anything? Had your microphone on. Okay, that's fine.
So, same thing.
Okay.
Low interest, same amount.
Okay, very good. Can I get a motion to suspend the rules? We have-
Move approval with suspension of the rules.
All right, well, we have motion from Linda and Bruce Bolden. Okay, second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Very good. Suspension of the rules.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, that would complete our budget and finance meeting this afternoon. So thank you for your attendance, and this meeting is adjourned.
That is the final committee meeting of the day. Council will meet in special session at 5 o'clock. Thank you.